Thank you, everybody, for spending a portion of your workday with us in this very exciting and informational session on influencers. Today, we'll be forecasting the future of influencer marketing, gaining insights with our expert panel. So on today's webinar about influencer marketing, we'll be covering some tools on influencer campaign tracking and attribution, how to create and leverage productive relationships with your influencers, as well as trending tactics such as whitelisting, influencer seeding, and live shopping. I'm your host for today's session. My name is Regina Pachetic, the Senior Partner Manager at Refersion, the premier affiliate network for thousands of D2C Shopify merchants. I'd like to extend a warm welcome and a thank you for sharing your expertise with us today. We are so fortunate to have in our panel speakers from companies from the likes of #Paid, Inveterate, Klarna, and Kinship. Hi, panel. I'd like to have a go around for intros. Please share your name, your role, and your company, and a brief description of what your company does and how it contributes to this wonderful influencer marketing ecosystem. Let's start with you, Anushka.
Hi, everyone. I'm Anushka, and I'm a strategist at #Paid. #Paid is a creator marketing platform that allows brands to launch, scale, and measure their creator campaigns all in one place. In my role as a strategist, I essentially bring together data, insights, and storytelling to develop campaign strategies for brands. And I'm excited to be here today.
We'll definitely gain a lot of insights from Anushka. Thank you. Let's move on to you, Julia.
Hi, I'm Julia Connell, the Vice President of Operations at Inveterate. We're a new platform that enables Shopify merchants to launch paid membership programs on their storefront. So for the first time ever, brands can launch an experience-based membership program that's turnkey to implement and gives their best customers access to member-only benefits like exclusive access to something with influencers or exclusive discounts or exclusive access to new products. Prior to that, I spent 5 years running digital and e-com for brands in the beauty space where influencers were really key parts of our entire content brand and performance marketing strategies. So excited to get back to talking about this topic.
Excellent. Thank you so much for that, Julia. Then let's move on to Mary.
Hey everyone, I'm Mary. I'm currently Global Head of Social Influencer at Klarna. Klarna is a key buy now, pay later provider here in the US, but we also have quite a presence in other markets across the globe. And we currently leverage influencer across our full marketing mix, across the full funnel. So I have a plethora of knowledge that I'm hoping I can share with you today.
Thank you, Mary. Very happy to have you here. And last but not the least, introduce yourself to our audience, Taylor.
Taylor, co-CEO of Kinship. At Kinship, you guys' pitches around each of your companies was great in intros. We help brands A through Z execute campaigns within the realm of influencer marketing, creating mass organic distribution on the organic side through influencers, and then repurposing their content to paid social, predominantly on Facebook ads and TikTok. But yeah, that's what we do here at Kinship.
Super relevant for our topic today. Thank you so much, Taylor. I'm so excited, and I'm sure as our audience is as well, very excited to learn from all of your insights and experiences. I just wanted to set the tone for all of our audience and attendees for our webinar today. On our intro registration page, we did ask them if they already have an existing affiliate or influencer tracking network. 37% said yes, 31% said no, 10% said not yet, and 22% said they're actively working on it. And to set the stage for understanding what we're really getting into, the tools and the tactics we'll be learning today, I think it's a good time to ask our attendees a poll question. So if we could pull up our first poll question, if everyone could just take a minute to answer. Are you currently or will you be working with influencers as part of your influencer program? Yes or no? Ooh. I'm not sure if everyone can see this, but on the panelist view, we're able to see that a whopping 92% actually said yes. People will be incorporating influencers as part of the overall program, which is not very surprising because according to a study on the state of influencer marketing conducted by Influencer Marketing Hub, more than 75% of brand marketers actually intend to dedicate budget to influencer marketing just in the year 2022 alone. So let's get right to it. So we all know that building a strong foundation with influencers is crucial for success. So For your opinion, guys, what are some key contributors to create a productive relationship between a brand and an influencer? I'd love to hear your thoughts on this, Julia.
Yeah, I think like influencers are running a business. So that's the most important thing to keep in mind. The work that they're doing looks effortless, but it's not. They have timelines, processes, contracts, and definitely need to be paid. So go in with the expectation that at some point there's some compensation for the work that they're doing. I think on authenticity is a really important contributor. Make sure that you or your team are following the influencer, you're engaging with their content, they're doing the same with yours. Bring them in as part of your brand, give them access to your founders, to your product team, get them really excited about the why behind what you do. And that passion that they're able to feel is going to come across very much so in their content. I think some of the best advice I ever got was to not try to control the creative so prescriptively. We've all lived in a world of like tight brand guidelines, and that just kind of has to go to some degree, and you've got to find the right degree. But it's really important that you let your creators do what they're so good at. And I think those are some of the foundational things that'll really be critical for a successful partnership.
That's definitely a good foundation for our audience to hear that this is a business, but it's a creative business. So there's some lots of room for creativity, but still, it's still money making for both sides in a really incredibly fun way. I saw you nodding along there, Anushka. I'd love to hear your thoughts on that too.
Yeah, no, I totally echo Julia's point there. The brands understand their product, but the creators really understand their audience. So I think part of, that productive relationship is making sure that the creators understand your brand and your product really well. So is it a really good brief, or maybe host a kickoff event if that's something that's feasible? And then, yeah, to your point, just let the creators do their magic. I think creative freedom is so important because the creators, they're just naturally going to be so much more invested if they have that creative freedom.
I love that, the focus on creative freedom, kind of like an art form too in the world of business. So that's good combination of the two. Any thoughts on that question, Mary?
I don't want to beat a dead horse. I mean, I completely agree with Julia and Anushka. I think, just remember, if you're approaching this relationship as a transactional one, that's what they're going to reciprocate. So I think really investing in the relationship, building a strong rapport, making them feel like they are a part of the brand will have a big impact in terms of the outcome of the work, as well as you building equity into the influencer partnership.
Perfect. Definitely involvement on both sides. What about you, Taylor?
Beating the dead horse. But yeah, creative freedom is everything. They're the people that have an understanding of how to create content that goes viral on the platforms we're looking to advertise on. We don't have the social following. I mean, maybe some of you guys do without me knowing, but they're the creators that understand how to do this. So leave it to them to interpret that and articulate that to their audience. And then secondly, to what Mary just said, yeah, it's all about building the relationship on the right foot. So building in a way that's non-transactional and relational with the ultimate goal of paying them down the line lends itself to seeding quite well, which we'll go into today, but all about just building relationships based on giving, not asking of anything in return, lending itself to authenticity and finding genuine product adopters.
Excellent. Thank you for that insight, Taylor. Let's jump a little bit on ROI, because I know we have a lot of marketers in here, but everyone's part of a business, right? A lot of people who joined us are from brands. So according to a study from Tomason, businesses are making $6.50 for every dollar spent on influencer marketing. ROI aside, what are some other reasons brands should invest their time, attention, and marketing dollars into working with influencers? Let's start with you, Taylor.
Yeah, I don't know if everyone will agree with this, but my subjective opinion, influencers' biggest value add is 100% their content creation. So ROI, honestly, and our personal opinion that comes from organic distribution posts is just the gravy. It's the cherry on top. The real value add here is being able to repurpose their content across brands' own channels. Like, for example, Facebook's going to be able to distribute that content way better than that influencer is going to be able to distribute that content to their audience to find greater ROI. And so having a consistent supply of mass content creation from influencers, once again, the people that have proven to create content that goes viral on the platforms people are looking to advertise on, the better. So that's just one channel specifically, but using that and being able to use that across all own channels is the biggest benefit, in my opinion, of influencer marketing.
That's a very good point. I saw you agreeing a lot there, Anushka. I'd love to hear your thoughts on what Taylor had just shared.
Yeah, no, you're totally right. I think the content creation is key. And partly the reason for that is because that content is just so authentic. It resonates so much better with people than a branded ad might. Creators have built this incredible trust with their audience. And then when they partner with brands, that trust kind of halos back to the brand. So something I would also keep in mind is because of that trust, I think creator marketing can also be a really good tool for upper funnel metrics like driving awareness or even consideration, because someone might be a lot more likely to notice your brand or even consider trying it if they're seeing it from an influencer that they already trust and have somewhat of a relationship built with.
I love hearing that. And I think everyone can agree, everyone who's seen at least one influencer video, even if they're trying to sell something, the way that they frame it, it speaks a lot to I think before it was still a gray area if something was an ad, but now things are so seamless and organic with the synergy between the brands and the influencers. It seems less likely like an ad, but rather a friend recommendation or someone you would trust in your circle that you would actually get the recommendation from. But you also mentioned something, Taylor, about let the other platforms do their thing about what they're good at. So I think one good thing that other platforms do well is acquisition. But beyond acquisition, how can brands leverage influencers to create greater value for their customers? I'd love to hear your thoughts on this, Mary.
I think we're all kind of touching on this as you're asking these different types of questions. I think influencers are so non-traditional that they can deliver a different element that you're kind of stuck to. So they can produce assets for you. They can deliver on trust. They have a built audience that ideally has affinity to your brand. So there's so much that they can offer. And I think it's that uniqueness that you want to tap into as a brand. And it's difficult to capitalize on that and any other channel.
Excellent points. Thank you, Mary. What about you, Julia? Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, just to build on what Mary said, I think content for sure. For a wellness brand, this could be working with an influencer to create recipes or healthy habits or workouts it's content that can then be shared across many other channels, and even exclusive experiences. If you find ways to bring a small group of customers or even a one-to-one experience with your customers. I think Sephora does this really well with beauty founders, unlocking access to skin consultations with skincare founders, things of that sort. Influencer content and access can become really powerful retention tools.
I love it. And thank you for the real life example of specific brands who are doing it and doing it well. I think a lot of our audience members love to hear that because it's easier to see what others have done and see what kind of success you want to replicate. That way you can have that vision for your brand if it fits in terms of the tactics that they've tried. Anything to add there, Taylor and Anushka?
Yeah, I was going to say, even creating products with influencers. I know Gymshark does this really well. They partner with their brand ambassadors, influencers that they work with repeatedly to create products and get new customers that way, because those customers are loyal to the influencer, and then they become loyal to the brand.
That's a good example also. These are brands that, to be honest, I don't necessarily use, but I've heard of, and that counts for something, meaning it's working, I think earlier Taylor alluded to some terms and trends that we actually hear that people are trying, marketers are trying, brands are trying, and we're all talking about tactics that brands have used in the influencer marketing space. I'd love to pull up our second poll. If you could pull that up, because we want to get an understanding of the audience members. If any of these influencer marketing trends are familiar? Have you heard of any of them? So for the audience members, can you select the terms that are familiar to you? Whitelisting, influencer seeding, live shopping, or I am not familiar with any of those terms. We just wanted to get a sense of what trends you've heard of, what tactics you've tried, just to get a sense of where our audience members are in terms of experience in this space. I think looking at these terms, it just goes to show how ever evolving this marketing channel really is. There's new and innovative tactics that people are trying, people are learning. Like the testing phase is done, we know what works, and we're seeing that these trends are really popular. Great. So we're seeing the poll results now. A whopping 50%, like half our audience, have heard of live shopping. It's a pretty big global trend. 42% have heard of influencer seeding. 37% have heard of whitelisting. And 29% says they are not familiar with any of these terms. Well, aren't we lucky that we have this great expert panel to explain to us what these influencer trends are? So let's talk about these trends, team. I just wanted to see what your experiences are, which one you would recommend, and how should brands go about it. Why don't we start with you, Julia?
Absolutely. All right. Seeding is foundational. Get your product into influencers' hands. Any way you can get this going. Look at influencers that your team follows, influencers who follow your brand, friends of influencers who you want to connect with. Like, be scrappy, do it any way you can. Just get started and get your product out to influencers. The entire objective here is test and learn. You're going to have to learn about the best way to approach an influencer to get the best response, the types of influencers that work. Test it all, just start. And I think that is critical to any program out there. Whitelisting is an incredible solution to utilize an influencer's audience to promote your content. So in the absence of the targeting on Facebook that we all were so lucky to have, with that gone, whitelisting allows you to partner with an influencer, serve ads as if they're coming from the influencer, but they are actually coming from the brand. The brand's paying for them. So you can reach their audience and learn more about potential momentum, if they're going to be a great influencer for you, if nothing's clicking. These are all good insights to build on if you're just getting started. I think live shopping is the trendiest of all. In the US, audience continues to be a challenge with live shopping. So leveraging an influencers network to drive audience, using influencers as hosts. I encourage brands just to test so that once live shopping clicks in the US, you're really ready to jump into it. That's my view on it, and excited to hear what the rest of the panelists think.
Thank you, Julia. I think that's a great foundation for our audience members to understand. Taylor, I'd love to hear your thoughts on anything to add on these trends, anything that our attendees should be aware of and something that they should try on their own.
Echo Julia on seeding. Definitely, we believe that's the foundation of any and all influencer marketing successful campaigns. Seeding by the way, just identifying influencers that are great brand fits, and even more importantly, quite honestly, great video content creators. Like, ultimately, the thought process, the lens you should look through before putting product in people's hands is, through their video content, could they sell me on this product? If the answer is yes, and they're a brand fit, then go ahead and move forward with that individual and seed them product. In addition to that, a great outreach message is literally communicating, hey, Regina, we think you're a great brand fit. Absolutely love the content you consistently put out. We think you'd love our product, and we want to send it to you, no strings attached. And what we mean by that is we have no expectation of you to post whatsoever. Just send me your address. We'll get this right out to you. So literally no strings attached, non-transactional message, building the relationship. And while you're communicating, you have no expectations. You obviously do at the same time. And just to give numbers to that, as I know everyone typically appreciates numbers. When we identify 500 influencers for brands, typically 100 to 200 of them opt in to receive product out of the 500, so 20% minimum. Then out of the people that receive product, 30% of those people, so 30 influencers, end up posting 2 to 3 times on average. So 30 influencers, 6 to 90 posts, all for the cost of 100
Gifting.
products. So if you have a COGS of $25, you're looking at $2,500. I think everybody on this call can attest, $2,500 for 30 influencers posting 60 to 90 assets, and we get usage rights to that content. It's pretty incredible. So seeding, while it's the foundations of everything, it also will lead to mass organic distribution on a monthly basis and content creation to supplement paid efforts. So that's seeding. On the whitelisting front, hot takes, but we have visibility into $350 million of ad spend, and we've seen zero correlation between whitelisting and a lift in performance. So hot take, would love to chat through that. Whitelisting, again, worth testing. We've seen it work for certain brands, but at the end of the day, it's really just the influencer creative. When you look at a heat chart of an ad, right, your eyes go from the creative to the headline, which is the little piece of copywriting beneath, the creative, then the body copy, and then the handle that's actually serving the ad. And so majority of the time, people's eyes don't even make it to the individual that's serving the ad. So we've really seen zero correlation between a lift there. It's all just about the creative. And the audience, honestly, Facebook thrives with broader audiences. And so getting access to the audience isn't the biggest value add. Facebook can outcompete serving that creative better than just narrowing it down to that influencer's audience. And so many times without whitelisting, I know this is a super long-winded answer, but so many times without whitelisting, we've had followers that followed that individual comment on their post, like, oh my gosh, I follow this person. So what does this mean? Facebook is smart enough to put it in front of the followers that are most likely to convert, whether you have whitelisting access or not. And we've seen that time and time again across the $350 million in ad spend. So we haven't seen a correlation. Again, it's worth testing like everything is, but influencers treat it like it's their social security number. And there's this hiked up rate for it that truly, in my opinion, does not make sense for what it's actually worth and proven to be worth. So worth testing if there's not some crazy hiked up price, but it's the creative that lends itself to performance, not whitelisting in our professional experience.
Well, thank you so much for that very informative hot take, Taylor. I loved it. I'd love to hear Mary or Anushka's feedback on Taylor's hot take based on what you've seen, anything you've tested on this front.
Coming from the brand side, it's a little bit different, but I will say more often than not, we are testing into whitelisting versus repurposing that influencer's content in our dark ads. And it is much more cost effective to just run the creative. That's really that's the secret sauce essentially. And I think that's what Taylor is kind of alluding to. And I think as the trend moves towards the more native the content, the more it performs, the more trust is in it. I think that's really why you're tapping these creators and influencers, is they are able to produce those assets that feel like they're coming from a peer, someone that you're more likely to take a recommendation from. So I completely agree. I recommend that, if you have the budget in your media spend to test it out, you should test it out. But consistently, we have found that we're pausing those ads and continuing to just run the creator assets across our own media channels. And then seeding is another interesting one. I think if you have a physical product, it makes a ton of sense. You should just be doing it, but it's always a little bit more challenging when you're selling a service. And there's not something tangible for them to hold, but there are still workarounds to that. But I will say, for Klarna, we're a payment option. We have an app. There are ways that we've identified to seed, but it's not as easy as just sending over a box and then inviting them to share. And then live shopping is a big one for us just because of our product offering and the value prop. It's something that we are kind of focusing on as an organization. We recently acquired a virtual shopping technology that we're integrating into our app. I think we see a ton of potential there. We're actually also strategic partners with TikTok to help them build out their virtual shopping capabilities. Only time will tell how the Western shopper will adapt it, like Julia had mentioned. But we've seen tons of success in the Asian market, and usually they're kind of first first to adopt, and then we kind of take it on. So I think if that's something that you want to explore and you have a small business and you have a network of people that are shopping, and you want to tap into that, I've seen that happen on a regular basis. It's not a high production by any means, but I know that it's driving conversion.
Thank you so much for that, Mary. Like me, I was born and raised in the Philippines, and live shopping for the past few years has been around in terms of trending as a means to sell. And you mentioned for years now, and you mentioned it's not high production. I've seen I think it can be very small budget to very elaborate. It depends, because it depends on the influencer and their audience, but I guess that just goes to show it works, right? Because I think the strong sense of urgency is there, and it's the connection that you have as they're doing the selling, and it goes by fast. It's actually quite fascinating to see. So I'm happy you shared a bit more about that trend. I find that in particular to be very exciting. Any last minute add-ons, Anushka, to what everything has shared on these trending tactics for 2022 for influencer marketing?
Yeah, I can jump in on whitelisting actually. Because we do a fair bit of that. And I think, Taylor, to your point, whitelisting can't replace organic content. Organic creator content is definitely what's leading this industry. I think whitelisting is a really good layer to implement on top of that, because organic only reaches about 10 to 15% of somebody's audience. So when we layer in whitelisting, we can reach a greater percentage of our audience, essentially by using, Facebook or different platforms, their targeting capabilities. And something that we've actually seen in case studies is people look at whitelisted ads longer, and maybe they don't notice the creator's handle, but perhaps it is just the way the creative is, because it feels more personal and more human rather than an ad. So you're less likely to just swipe past it. So again, totally agree that but if we're looking at what's most effective, it is that good organic content, but whitelisting is a really good layer to add on if budget permits, for sure.
Thank you, Anushka. And thank you, everybody. Along with the audience, I'm sure. Go ahead, Taylor.
Just to touch on that for clarity, definitely recommending taking that content and repurposing the organic content, paid media to amplify in that way. Just when testing that same creative from the brand handle and making sure to serve it from the influencer handle and testing that across $350 million of ad spend. Sometimes this one outperforms, sometimes this one outperforms, sometimes this one has longer viewership, sometimes this has longer viewership. The main thing we're really testing though is what has the greatest conversion rate.
That makes sense.
And we've just seen no correlation between one of them and a lift.
Thank you, everybody. I think that was truly a hot take, Taylor. We loved it. And thank you for the numbers that you've shared behind it, and makes sense about everyone's foundational experiences and seeing it from the different sides of the spectrum based on what you see data-wise. So I'm seeing a few questions about what these trends are. So which leads in quite nicely to my next question that I'm curious to see what everyone's take on is for some of these brands that might be hesitant to adopt these newer trends like live shopping and seeding and whitelisting. What are some other proven strategies that they can implement to improve their influencer marketing efforts? I'd love to hear your thoughts on this, Anushka.
Yeah, I think something that I would recommend for brands that are maybe hesitant to try newer trends is maybe play into your existing marketing plans. So something I always think, if you're already running paid social, maybe creator whitelisting is a perfect segue into influencer marketing. And then if that works well and you're seeing success, then perhaps you can try a more traditional influencer relationship. Another tactic is leveraging brand ambassadors. We see that there is an increase with an increase in the frequency of posts, we see a statistically significant increase in brand familiarity. And then with that familiarity with the creator posting, when you're more familiar with creators that are posting, we see a statistically significant increase in consideration intent. So since brand ambassadors kind of bring both of those together, we can see that they can help with an increase in not just familiarity, but also consideration.
Thank you, Anushka. That's very helpful. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this also, Mary.
I'd say starting small and learning fast. I don't think you need to be a big brand with a massive budget in order to dip your toes into influencer. I think based on some of the dialogue that we've been having thus far, it's clear that there's so much influencers and creators can offer to your business, but you just have to start somewhere. And that can be everything as grassroots as just doing manual searches on Instagram, on TikTok, on the platforms to identify which influencers you think pair well with what your brand has to offer and messaging them. I mean, this happens all the time. These influencers also started somewhere and they were also doing the same thing. I have at least 30 different inbound opportunities every day from influencers who are trying to climb the ladder and get up there themselves. So this is not something that is new to them. They understand this. They're also trying to hustle. And I think if they see opportunity there and you're able to really reach out to them in an authentic way, it's a great place to start.
Thank you for that. I think that's quite practical and actionable, Mary. Just start small and just start. And I think the keyword that we're all hearing from everyone's feedback here is just test. Test what makes sense for your brand. And there's a lot of experts that have done some testing. Make sure you read up on it and see what works, but make sure you test things that apply to your brand. And it'll be different results is what I'm hearing based on the creator, based on the creative, based on what you're selling, the products, based on your brand. Can go really different ways. For Taylor and Julia, any add-on thoughts for what other like proven strategies you can you'd like to share to our audience today?
After you,
Yeah,
Julia.
I think it all comes from definitely just starting, completely aligned there. I saw a question come through about the difference between an influencer and a brand ambassador. And when starting and building a program, I've always found it very helpful to take a tiered approach. So start with kind of this wide net that you're casting of seeding, building relationships, and then map out what that hierarchy looks like for your brand. In my experience in beauty, it was from your kind of massive layer that you're seeding to, there's an elevated layer where you're engaging regularly with these influencers on campaigns. Maybe there's a stronger commission offered to those influencers. You can tier it all the way up to where I would place a brand ambassador as really someone who's under a contract with you, likely an annual agreement. You're maybe doing events together, product collaborations, brand collaborations. They are in there and part of your brand in a more significant way than an influencer who might be more in the content creation category is the way that I viewed it. I don't know that there's a right or wrong here. I would just recommend that you set a roadmap and then start working towards it.
That's great. Thank you, Julia. The tiered approach sounds like it makes a lot of sense, especially for testing and trying things out with new content influencers. Any add-ons to that, Taylor?
I love what Julia had to say. Yeah, a tiered approach, a methodical approach. Definitely recommend starting small, seed first, see who proves to actually post content free of cost, follow up with them for usage rights, get that content repurposed into paid media, onboard all of those people that prove to post free of cost on doing affiliate programs, shout out Reversion, get them onboarded there. And then after that, if people prove to have a warm audience from Reversion and the organic analytics, they're able to show conversions on them, go deeper and then pay them on an ongoing basis and incorporate, Anushka, what she's talking about with whitelisting, test that as well. I think that methodical approach in that order is a bulletproof way to find success. But in addition to that, don't be afraid to start small in the influencers you work with as well. So like micro versus macro. Big proponent of micro influencers, reason being you avoid agents and managers who have their livelihoods contingent on them hustling you for hiked up rates. I came from like the NFL marketing world where we represented guys like Aaron Rodgers and people. There was no care for the brand and their ROI. It was just taking care of the athletes' hiked up rates and making sure they got paid. So try to avoid that and be cognizant of that. Per follower basis, micros have greater reach, greater engagement, greater conversion rate, more niche audiences to align your brand with across the board in comparison to macros. And when you follow up for usage rights to the content that's being posted, micros are flattered that you want to repurpose that, whereas macros are going to charge you $10,000+ for 30-day usage rights. So you get to avoid that altogether as well. So I would definitely recommend working with micros if you're just getting it off the ground and always continue to do so thereafter.
Thank you, Taylor. And I love that your former NFL experience is still having you share with our audience today to start small. Like you went big, but I think that also addresses one of the questions that we got via the Q&A portal. How can smaller brands start on this journey with influencers when a large budget for paid content creation is not yet available in the marketing budget? I think everyone's sentiments here is there's lots of different ways that you can try different tactics with micro influencers, just reaching out in an organic way. Make sure it's a brand fit, make sure what you're doing outreach on makes sense. And I feel like just start. I feel like that's the best advice in dipping your toes in the world of affiliate in influencer marketing. We talked a lot about numbers today, and I know that targeting and attribution are the main components of understanding the customer journey and influencer effectiveness. Can you all recommend some ways brands can keep track of these marketing campaigns based on your experience in an effective way? Mary, let's start with you.
Full transparency, the majority of the work that I do is to drive brand. So tracking isn't our number one thing. You know, we're looking at engagement, we're looking at brand lift, where we're executing brand studies to measure that. But I will say we do support the co-marketing team, which is tied to the merchants that currently leverage Klarna. And we always enforce UTMs, tracking links. We encourage unique coupon codes for these influencers so that we can actually try and gather some form of ROI from the content that they put out. And then as we're building relationships with some of our partners, we do encourage them to also participate in our affiliate program, which we're currently building out internally. So I think those are the different types of things that I would recommend for tracking your influencer activity and seeing, what kind of impact they're driving for your brand.
Very helpful and very cool to know what it's like in terms of the data that you're seeing on the Klarna side. What about you, Anushka? Especially, I feel like I'd love to hear your thoughts on this question in particular for tracking.
I would actually echo Mary's thoughts there. I don't have a lot of experience with attribution, but I would say, yeah, trying to find different ways to measure that. Again, your attribution links, your paid media attribution, those are probably some of your best ways to see that ROI.
Excellent. Taylor, any thoughts to add to that?
Another shout out, Refersion on the organic side. They do a great job at tracking organic attribution. And it's just worth bringing up, like the iOS 14 update, I think has lended confusion to people. It definitely has created problems with visibility into attribution, for example, within Facebook's ad dashboard. So when you're repurposing influencer content and paid media, like even there's confusion of like, what revenue is this actually driving? But it hasn't been an effectiveness issue. So we haven't seen any drop off in overall performance from an MER perspective. So like media efficiency ratio, total revenue divided by total paid media spend. So with no drop off in the MER metric, which is the leading indicator of success now, where visibility into Facebook attribution has decreased 30%, MER attribution hasn't decreased at all. So what does that mean? It just means attribution within Facebook's ad account decreased 30%, but the effectiveness of that remained the same. So just keep that in mind. And a great tool actually to get a gauge of what that impact was on your brand is a tool called Statless. They do a great job at showing the impact of iOS 14 on your brand and to the visibility of that impact on Facebook or all your other paid channels, including influencer as well. But it just goes to show that it's not an effectiveness issue, it's an attribution issue. But tools like Refersion on organic, tools like Statless on the paid media side can help bring clarity to how your influencers are performing for you organically as well as in paid media. But definitely still very effective. And you just need to figure out what that drop off in the visibility of attribution was for you.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Taylor, for that. And I think the overall sense is that everyone's excited to start these new tactics and trends, and everyone, should be encouraged to start and dip their toes in the world of influencer marketing. But with so many factors contributing to creating the ultimate influencer marketing strategy, for our expert panel, how do each of your services work in connection with the others to offer the best experience from start to finish? That way they understand, like Taylor mentioned, additional partners that you can get. We'd love to get an understanding of how Inveterate, #Paid, Klarna, and Kinship all work together in this ecosystem. So let's start with you, Julia.
So Inveterate actually sits towards the end of the process. We're the solution that the brand's going to bring on to run a paid membership program independent of influencers. Your members, your customers would pay a fee to unlock access to certain benefits, very much like Prime, but for every other brand. Where we become very relevant with influencers is when you're crafting what are benefits that are really special and unique to my brand that are going to be reasons for a customer to be excited about continuing to come back and shop with us. So if you have powerful influencer content, if you have the ability or interest in unlocking experiences for influencers, not only do you have the opportunity to drive a recurring revenue stream through memberships, but your customers are going to be very excited to pay for access to that content and those experiences. So we're a way to kind of light the whole strategy up at the end, I would say.
I love it, Julia. Everything you shared just sounds so cutting edge and definitely catering to the power of building that relationship with the influencers.
Yes.
So very exciting to hear about all the good things that Inveterate does. For Mary on the Klarna side, I'd love to hear your thoughts.
Sorry, just trying to find that unmute button. Again, like it is a little bit interesting on the brand side because, you know, my primary customer is the consumer, but I will say on the other side of our business, we do also service merchants. In terms of buy now, pay later, we are integrated with everything from massive enterprise companies like H&M, but also SME brands. And the benefit of buy now, pay later is just the accessibility to your product to a more mass audience who may not be able to afford it in that moment. Beyond that, our app has massive offerings. So like I had spoken to earlier, we're currently building out a virtual shopping product that will be available to our merchants, and will also help facilitate bringing in the creators and the influencers to do that live shopping. And then we recently acquired a platform called Apparel, which is currently offering performance marketing campaigns for brands and connecting them to influencers. So there's a plethora of offerings that Klarna has to brands. It's just depending on what is the need.
Thank you so much, Mary. That's very helpful, especially us seeing on the other side how your services are able to help all the different parties coming into play into influencer marketing. For Taylor, we'd love to hear more about Kinship.
Yeah, it might be a little redundant on my end, but we're an influencer marketing agency, strategists, helping brands execute their campaigns A through Z. All things influencer seeding to onboarding them into affiliate programs with, shout out again, Refersion, and then launching and repurposing the content into paid social campaigns where we also manage Facebook and TikTok ads. But yeah, that's all that we do.
Excellent. Thank you. And I think from this webinar also, Taylor, as everyone can see, Taylor will have all the numbers for you if you work with Kinship. So I think that's a great place to start in assessing effectiveness of the campaigns that you want to try. And then last but not the least, we'd love to hear how #Paid comes into the influencer marketing ecosystem for Anushka.
Yeah, so #Paid is a full stack solution for brands that are wanting to add influencer campaigns to their marketing. Everything from creator selection to communication, contracting, whitelisting, measurement, all of that is in our platform. So it's kind of like a one place hub. But how I kind of see all our different businesses come together is, perhaps you can use Inveterate to kind of find who your most loyal customers are that are also creators, and then work with Kinship to develop a really great gifting strategy, and then extend that relationship further with #Paid and pay your creators for their content, leverage whitelisting, and Refersion is great for kind of seeing how all of that organic content is doing, like you mentioned earlier, Taylor. And then Klarna, just from that consumer point of view, it just makes buying product for your customers so much easier.
I love it. Thank you so much for that great wrap up for everything that we discussed today, Anushka. And thank you everyone for your expert insights. We've been getting questions left and right. That's why I wanted to make sure we had dedicated some time to addressing the particular questions from our audience. From Tracy, how do you find the influencers who fit the brand well? I know we've talked about that quite a bit on this webinar. Anyone have any thoughts on how to do that and give like how to's?
I'm happy to
I mean-
chime in. Oh, go ahead, Julia.
Nope, go ahead, Mary.
I think it depends on how you're sourcing this talent, but if you're doing it manually just by searching or through your discovery or For You page, the first step would be to kind of build out and aggregate a list of the different types of targets you want to go for. And then once you feel like you have a healthy list there, you would begin outreach. So draft an email that will be easy for you to quickly tweak so that you're directing it to that person, but then you can send it out in a mass format. And then once you start getting interest, ideally with nano or micro influencers who will likely be a lot more responsive, you can ask them to then come to you with some of their data. So take a look at their demo, take a look at what their audience looks like, where do they live, do they align with what you're selling? And that's kind of a great place to start. And if you're not going about it that way, there are tons of tools that are available at your disposal that you can use that can actually pull all of that data for you to evaluate.
That's very helpful, Mary. Thank you. Any thoughts to add to that, Julia?
I think Mary covered it.
Got it. Great. Next question from Rochelle. What does Taylor mean by lift? What are we measuring / what's his experimental design? Where does he see whitelisting succeed?
Lift and performance just mean like an increase in return on ad spend, higher ROI, or lower cost per acquisition. So that's what I mean by lift and performance. And whitelisting, where do I think it exists? Just kind of reiterate, after seeding, people that prove to be genuine product adopters, prove to post authentic content, you repurpose into paid media, their content works well organically, the content works well in paid media. At that point, I think they've proven to be a top performer. They've proven to be an authentic lover of your brand, and they create great content. Then engage with them for whitelisting and see how whitelisting performs from the brand handle, that content from the brand handle, as well as from the influencer handle. I think that's what someone a lot of the time miss. They just do whitelisting with the influencer and they don't compare and contrast to, hone in on that variable to see what is actually driving performance here. So make sure you do that and figure out for your brand, is this lending a lift in performance for you? And is it worth paying an additional rate moving forward? So hopefully that answers the question, but.
Thank you, Taylor. Very helpful. And then from Money Q, I think this is a good, especially since I've heard from the different panelists also, different partners and tools that you can utilize for them to maintain and track properly their influencer campaigns. What CRM do you all suggest to manage your relationships with influencers? Have you had any experience with success with anyone in particular you'd like to recommend?
#paid.
Of course. And then I feel like I'm just going through the questions. The next question is from Ingrid Walter. About how long does it usually take for influencers to get back to you once you reach out? I think that's a great question because it's very case by case. I'd love to hear your thoughts. I would greatly appreciate any advice on approach and follow-up.
I think Taylor offered a good approach at one point. That might be worth recapping.
Yeah, when seeding, so again, just reaching out with a message and literally steal verbatim. This is what we use verbatim. Hey, Regina, we think you're a great brand fit. Absolutely love the content you consistently put out. We think you love our product and we want to send it to you. No strings attached. Put it in all caps if you want. And what we mean by that is we have no expectation of you to post whatsoever. Just send me your address. We'll get right back to you. What you'll find is, just to pre-warn you, at times these influencers will sometimes just get back with a copy and paste message of like, here's my media kit. If you get that, don't be afraid. Just literally double down. They probably didn't even read your message if that's the case. Hey, no. no strings attached. We have no expectation of you to post. We just want to send you this product. Time and time again, that will go so far with this influencer. It's a breath of fresh air to them with all the spam that they get with people reaching out to them in the first outreach that's transactional. So yeah, and then if they don't respond, just follow up with them again, reiterating the no strings attached message, no expectation on the post. We have a 3 to 5 follow-up flow over email as well as over the social channel you're looking to activate them on. So like TikTok Creator Marketplace or Instagram DMs. And that's a great way to go about it. And then with seeding, by the way, another platform I would recommend getting that's really cost effective is Mighty Scout. Because what you don't want to happen is if you seed product, you don't want someone internally to be scouring the internet 24/7 to see who posted what and when. Mighty Scout is a great social listening tool that will basically just collect all the content in real time for you. And show you who posted what and when, and then allows you to download the content from that platform instead of having the creator like send you that creative. Definitely fault for usage rights, always. Definitely not recommend that, but you can eliminate the step of following up for them to send over the content after they post and scouring the internet 24/7. So
Thank you, Taylor. I think that's like golden advice, especially for the step-by-step, for the flow and the follow-ups, and the following up. Even if you get a pre-recorded or a generic response, I think it all goes back to the building the relationship with these partners that you want to have in your influencer campaign sphere, right? The building relationship starts from there, and then the follow-ups, and then once you get to know these influencers, then they'll be more than likely to form a partnership with you, especially with proven success in prior campaigns. This is
Regina,
yes, go ahead.
so I was just going to offer, I think it's important to keep in mind that Taylor also mentioned they're going out to a list of, was it 500, and ultimately netting out 100 kits or packages that they're seeding. So don't be discouraged by the no's. This isn't unlike sales where it's just a numbers game.
For sure. And apply the percentages. So 20% opt in to receive your product out of all these reach outs. So 100 to 500. If it's 50, 10, and then 30% of the people that end up receiving product end up posting on average 2 to 3 times. So if you did 50, it'd be 50, 10, 3 influencers posting 6 to 9 assets. Start small, but yeah, apply the percentages.
Great. Thank you, Julia, for that follow-up. I think that makes sense to call out. Cast a wide net and then work on the ones that responded, and we'll see what happens from there. I think this is a good question that just came in based on like starting this relationship. Once you've already gotten the responses from the influencers that you've reached out to, when you get content rights, are you having them sign an actual contract or just agreeing via direct message? Anyone want to take on that specific question?
From a brand perspective, I mean, I think both are accepted. It just depends on how you're approaching things. Like if this is a big name influencer, I would recommend, putting an actual agreement together. But if it's a micro influencer, as long as you have that approval written somewhere and you've documented it, that should suffice.
Gotcha. Perfect. Anyone else want to have anything to add to what Mary shared?
Yeah, so like after a post go live, like this example of like a seeding campaign, steal the follow-up message too if you want, but like, so glad, hey, Regina, so glad you love the product we sent you, so much so you're willing to share this content with your audience. Hey, we'd love to be able to share this content with our audiences as well. Can we have the rights to do so? And if you want to get really specific, over, via Facebook ads for 30 days. And that's enough time before creative fatigue sets in as well on those ads. If it's a micro, like Mary's saying, I kind of agree with that. I would screenshot their response of granting usage rights. I would highly recommend that. And if you're trying to be incredibly safe, follow up with an agreement after that as well. And I would definitely, Mary, you hit it on the head of the nail. If it's a macro influencer, don't play games, get it in writing too. But with micros, screenshotting that agreement written can serve as legal affirmation there.
This is very good, helpful advice. It sounds like everyone's speaking from experience, which I know is always invaluable insight. Another CRM question, and I'll direct this to Anushka. Are you able to ensure that the influencers you're working with deliver the content you agreed on? Is there a way that hashtag paid can work on that in terms of content delivery for actual running campaigns?
Yeah, for sure. So we actually have the whole process of reviewing and approval all kind of built into our platform. So once you kind of select which creators you want to work with, you can kind of the brands will create a brief for the influencers, and then they'll take that, create content, submit concepts, and then if there are any revisions, you can kind of send those revisions on platform itself. And then once it's good to go, you can just hit approve and they can post it.
I love it. Thank you for giving us that, like the process flow. Especially, it sounds like you do the checks and balances on your end, so the brands don't have to worry about that. So there's lots of solutions available from all the different platforms and services that our panelists can provide. There's still some questions coming in, which is great. It sounds like everyone's very engaged, but unfortunately, I think we only have time for one more question before we wrap things up. So the last question is, we understand the examples of these recognized brands across industries and their strategies, and love the fact that influencers are doing business and say it louder, Taylor, that giving is better than asking to the influencer. However, we have a lot of new young brands who are diving into this and don't have enough budgets. How do you help them out even when micro and nano expect compensation for their time and effort, which is fair? I thought that was a helpful last question for everyone to share their insights on.
I can take that one. I've been in those shoes. I think you have to be persuasive. You have to continue trying new approaches, be relentless, just as a founder would be going out to try and sell their product into a first retailer's hands, if that's a fair analogy. And I think casting that wide net with seeding, start with those numbers that Taylor shared. I worked for a beauty device brand. Our COGS were not inexpensive. So we would constantly sit with our executive team and try to figure out, how can we make this work? How can we make this work? These dollars that we spend here are so much more efficient than dollars we can put into paid. So just keep trying new approaches, get started with seeding, find some momentum, and then make a case to allocate some dollars to trying something more. And eventually you start to build a program that shows real return.
Thank you so much for that, Julia. Go ahead, Mary.
I was just going to add that I completely agree with you, Julia. I also think honesty goes a long way. I mean, you can let this influencer know that like you currently do not have budget to pay them anything, but you feel like they would be a great fit for the brand, explain the reasons why, and then tout that there will be paid opportunities down the line. And I do find that that ends up being a successful tactic. You just want to make sure that you are being honest, that like as your brand grows, you want the influencer to grow with your brand, and you will remember, you know, the fact that they followed through with this and they came on at an early stage while you were still starting out as well. I mean, I think you're just talking to another person at the end of the day. And we've all been there. So
that's great.
And just to add on to this as well, just because my name got mentioned in that, seeding lends itself to free posts. So there's no cost. So when you reach out in this way, again, if they send back, well, here's my rates, you literally communicate. We have no expectation of you to post, but what happens after you ultimately end up seeding them product or posts come. And again, it's a numbers game. The cost ultimately is not paying the influencer to post from seeding, it's paying the COGS to get the product to their doorstep. And so if you have COGS of $25 times 100 product send outs, you're looking at a $2,500 investment that would ultimately lend itself to 30 influencers posting 60 to 90 assets. So if you're bootstrapping this thing, there is no greater campaign to run than a seeding campaign if you're looking to do this internally. And if you really want to get wild and crazy to make this super inexpensive, hire a VA to do the outreach overseas and handle that on your behalf internally, and put it to the test and then scale it from there.
Very good insights. Any last minute thoughts for you, Anushka?
Yeah, I think something else that could be great to try is if you have the manpower, maybe trying to tap into some communities and, even just talking about your product and seeing what the interest is, maybe even gathering feedback from different communities. Say you're working on a supplement brand, go to your neighborhood gyms and see what they think about it. You don't even have to ask them to post anything at that point. Get them interested in your brand, and then maybe they'll even reach out and say, hey, I really like this. I'd like to post about it. So yeah, but of course that requires some manpower.
That's very creative too, Anushka, but I feel like there's no limits with starting influencer marketing. I wish we could address these other questions, but I feel like I already feel smarter after attending this session from our expert panel. So I just wanted to say thank you all again for your experience and insights and sharing everything that you know and want to give advice for our audience today for the panel. Thank you to Anushka from #Paid, Mary from Klarna, Taylor from Kinship, and Julia from Inveterate for sharing your invaluable insights for our audience today. For our audience, a friendly reminder that we'll be sending through a post-webinar survey to get your feedback on this session and action on any follow-up questions and connection with our expert panel. The Refersion team would also love to meet you at the industry events we'll be attending. To see this list, please head on over to get.refersion.com/events to find us. Appreciate everyone joining us today. Thank you so much, panel. Thank you for learning with Refersion, and have a fabulous day, everyone. Thank you. Thank you so much.